If you've been keeping your eye on the news in the United States of America during the course of this year, you might be forgiven for thinking that the transition away from fossil fuels towards renewable technologies has now come to a permanent grinding halt in that great nation, and that beautiful clean coal will shortly be making a triumphant comeback to power the mighty electricity grids and industries that are apparently all about to return to the land of the free and the home of the brave, restoring the American economy and society back to the halcyon days it enjoyed just after the Second World War, when the current US president was a young boy. It's hard to think of a more delusional aspiration, to be honest, but then again, it's hard to think of a more delusional human being than the one currently occupying the Oval Office. It's certainly true to say that the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill that the President recently signed into law was specifically designed, among other things, to fundamentally undermine all progress on clean energy expansion. And it is probably fair to say that the measures in that legislation could inflict a considerable amount of damage on many of the clean energy projects that had been set up with the help of incentives contained in the Inflation Reduction Act passed by the previous administration. But here's the fatal flaw in the strategy of hampering the rollout of energy generators like solar panels and wind turbines. The investors in and developers of those technologies are not pursuing them for ideological reasons. They're pursuing them for hard-nosed economic reasons. Renewables are simply more reliable, more affordable, and far faster to build than their fossil fuel competitors. On Sunday the 21st of September 2025, on the eve of the solar equinox, a national day of action called Sunday is happening in the United States to celebrate the power of solar and wind technologies. And it's an event that every US citizen can get involved in. Hello, and welcome to Just Have a Think. I'll come back to the details of Sunday and how you can get involved a little bit later in the video. But first of all, let's just have a think about that claim I made just now about solar and wind in the United States being faster and cheaper than fossil fuels. Where am I getting that data from then? Well, let's start with the cost. According to the latest data from one of the world's oldest and most influential financial advisory and asset management firms, Lazard, who are highly regarded for their neutral, non-political, non-ideological analysis based firmly on what is cheapest on the dollar, the unsubsidised levelised cost of energy, or LCOE, of utility-scale solar photovoltaic power in the United States is now lower even than the very cheapest form of fossil fuel electricity generation, which is a combined cycle gas turbine power station, or CCGT, and far cheaper than the hideously inefficient gas peaker plants that are still used in many states to mop up spikes in demand during the course of a day. Even when energy storage is added in to firm up that solar power generation, it still remains competitive with CCGT, far cheaper than gas peakers, and cheaper even than nuclear power or coal. And it's a similar story for onshore wind. Again, even with energy storage added into the mix, it still comes out more or less on a par with CCGT and well ahead of other non-renewable technologies. For a more detailed look at what constitutes levelised cost of energy and its more exacting sibling, levelised full system cost of energy, you can click up there somewhere or follow the link in the description section to a video explainer I made on that earlier this year. It's not just Lazard finding renewables to be on an ever more competitive cost curve though. Similar conclusions can be found at the International Energy Agency, the US National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, Berkeley Lab in California, the World Bank and the World Economic Forum, and even the United States' own Energy Information Administration, or EIA, which recently published its annual Energy Outlook report, showing that in most regions of the United States, the LCOE of solar power is lower than CCGT, even without the tax credit. And all those numbers are calculated assuming no additional cost to fossil fuel producers for the damaging emissions caused by the combustion of their fuels. And by the way, I've left links in the description section to all the reports and analyses I'm referencing in this video. So let's have a think about speed then. Because despite the rampant disinformation coming from certain quarters suggesting our warming atmosphere is absolutely nothing to worry about, most rationally minded people who rely on scientifically derived empirical data to help them form their conclusions know that speed is of the essence in the energy transition. And for those who prefer their empirical data a little more on the economic side, well, of course, the faster a project is completed, the less interest has to be paid on capital investment loans, and the sooner the developers and venture capitalists start to see a return on their money. Based on stats from the Solar Energy Industries Association, or SEIA, a typical utility-scale solar park can go from initial design to fully commissioned operational facility in as little as 17 months. And according to the US Office of Industries, from first equipment order being placed to final commissioning of an onshore US wind farm takes around 20 months. Getting a new fossil-fired power station up and running takes about 4 years, and a US nuclear power station can take more than a decade to come into reality, usually with pretty horrendous cost overruns. So wind and solar look like very smart capital investments indeed. According to recent analysis by the SEIA, in conjunction with industry analysts Wood Mackenzie, solar power and energy storage made up 84% of all new US electricity grid capacity in 2024, with 50 gigawatts of solar PV installed during that year, the largest single year of growth of any US energy technology in over 2 decades. This year, solar, wind and batteries combined are projected to make up 99% of all new US energy installations. Other research undertaken by the well-respected industry think tank Ember found that while it took 8 years for solar power to go from 100 gigawatts globally to 1 terawatt, it took only 2 more years to double up to 2 terawatts. These are the unstoppable exponential S-curves that all new disruptive technologies exhibit and always have done. Even fossil fuels themselves went through the same explosive growth back in the early part of the 20th century as they disrupted the incumbent industries of the time. And which state is installing the most solar? Is it a left-wing, ideologically driven blue state? No, it's Texas. Just that state alone is projected to add almost 10 gigawatts of new solar capacity this year, not because it has some kind of environmental epiphany, but because the numbers stack up really nicely. In fact, Reuters tell us that in 2024, Texas surpassed California as the state with the most utility-scale solar capacity. Since the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, US solar module manufacturing capacity has increased nearly 4-fold, surpassing 50 gigawatts by early 2025, enough to meet pretty much all domestic demand. In other words, almost all the solar panels America needs can now be made in America by American workers, and the families of those workers will benefit as well, not just from gainful employment, but also because communities that get most of their power from solar energy report fewer asthma attacks, clearer skies and quieter neighbourhoods. This report from Berkeley Lab estimated that in 2022, wind and solar prevented between 1,200 and 1,600 premature deaths by cutting emissions of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, with cumulative savings of $249 billion from 2019 to 2022. According to a poll taken in the States late last year, no fewer than 87% of Americans support federal incentives to deploy solar and energy storage, including 78% of people who voted for the current president. And yet this US administration is doing everything in its power to dismantle and destroy all that progress. Because the numbers don't add up? No, because renewable energy doesn't fit with the hopelessly backward-looking ideology of the people now occupying the White House, who are inextricably financially linked to big oil, gas and coal. But as Bill McKibben recently wrote, the war on wind and solar will fail because the force of economic gravity is finally on the side of clean energy. In a recent speech, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, pointed out that last year, $2 trillion flowed into clean energy globally, $800 billion more than into fossil fuels.
This is not just a shift in power. This is a shift in possibility.
So what's this Sunday event on the 21st of September all about then? Well, it's a national day of action by people right across the United States to demand the large-scale, rapid deployment of clean energy. There'll be rallies, ribbon cuttings on new solar farms, e-bike parades, public art, and all sorts of other activities up and down the country. If you're in the States, then you can get involved yourself by checking out this map of events and sending in an RSVP to confirm you'll be attending an event near you. And of course, you can always host your own event, whether that's welcoming your neighbours into your home to talk about the clean energy improvements you've made, or organising an e-bike ride in your local park, or even setting up a full-scale march or rally in your local area. Whatever activity you feel you can manage and put together will be a crucial addition to the overall impact of the day. Jump over to this page to get more information on how to set all that up and liaise with the Sunday organisers to get the full benefit of their advice and resources. Now, I realise what I'm about to say is a bit of a cliche, but it's one of my favourite cliches, so I'm going to say it anyway. You might feel like your efforts are no more than a drop in the ocean, but oceans are made up of drops, and if enough people get involved in this kind of movement, then change will come to America. Didn't someone else once say that? Anyway, I'll leave the last word to UN Secretary General Guterres.
Now we are on the cusp of a new era. Fossil fuels are running out of road, and the sun is rising on a clean energy age.
All the links for all the Sunday event tools and assets are included in the description section below. So why not jump down there now to see how you can get busy. And good luck. That's it for this week. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and all notifications buttons if you want to keep up with my weekly content. And if you feel you'd like to support the work I do here at Just Have a Think, you can do that by joining the fantastic group of individuals over at Patreon who enable me to stay completely independent and keep ads and sponsorship messages out of all my videos. And in case you're wondering, no, nobody has paid me to make this video either. So thanks very much for watching. Have a great week. And remember to just have a think. See you next week.